know what happens on Halloween? Yeah.
What's up, Halloween fans? My name is Zyler. I'm going to be reviewing Halloween 1978, which is both directed and composed by John Carpenter. This isn't a very normal thing for movies to be both directed and composed by the same person. In fact, another movie that I can think that did the same thing was Werewolf by Night, a recent production by Marvel Studios. This movie, it's a Halloween classic that for me and my family, we watched it every year. Halloween, we went through all the sequels, as terrible as they may be, always skipping Halloween 3. But we always watched 1, 2, Return, Revenge, Curse of. This movie and franchise has a very big place in my heart. This movie, for sure, actually really love this film overall. So what are my thoughts on this film? I think that overall this film has a pretty decent story, in all honesty. And I enjoy the presence that Michael Myers has, and something that I don't think is really done extremely well in later sequels, is that Michael is always there, but he's not always the direct threat, but more in the background or in the foreground. Especially with sequels that are happening now, Michael seems to be the threat, and it seems he's always an active threat rather than a passive one even, and where that tension isn't really as strong as it is here. And I really like that aspect, and I really like that part of the shape in this movie compared to later sequels when he just seems like another mass murderer. As I said before, I have a deep love for this film, but what do I rate it? First and foremost, I have a 10-point scale. 0 being awful or 1 being awful. I've never had a 0 movie, honestly. And a 10 being great or amazing to me, or even perfect in my eyes. I base this on 6 criteria. The action, the cinematic aspect of it, which includes both the music as well as the cinematography, and just the overall look and feel of the film. I also base it on the characters, how strong they are, and how closely they remain to their characters, or if they go through a character arc, how believable is this change in their character. I also base it on humor. I believe that every film should have at least a little bit of humor. It's not an essential piece, but I think humor can really accent a story, especially a dark story, so it doesn't feel so bleak and dull and just so down on the luck, because I feel like that's just not a fun film-going experience, you know? I feel like every story should have a little bit of humor. That's why the comedic relief character archetype exists, right? I also base it off a plot. Instead of just basing it off the story or the setting or the writing, I just dump this all into one category of plot, much like how I do music and cinematography into the cinematic qualities. This is just to basically, how believable is the story that we're living in, how believable is the universe that we're living in, and do the choices of the characters make sense? Does it make sense that we're going from A to B to C, or does it feel all jumbled up like we just skipped from B all the way down to D? Movies like that take you out of their universe, and so that's why it's on that criteria. And finally, we have suspense, which I also think every movie should have. If you have an action hero that you don't believe will die, it's not really an action hero, is it? It's just another hero that has no consequences and there's no stake, and it takes away that tension in the film of making it entertaining and that thrill. The action in this movie is very plain, and there's not a lot of it. The first chunk of the movie has Michael breaking some glass, running away in a car. There's some off-screen deaths, and he finally shows up in the final, I want to say it's the final 30 minutes of the film, and that's when he starts going after Annie, Linda, and Bob, and it's very, very tame. In fact, I think the most action that happens in this movie is actually happening to a closet. He tears up a closet to get to Laurie, and that's the most violence that's in this movie, in all honesty. Everything else is relatively tame, but the action here is satisfying. I feel like the lack of gore honestly accents the movie rather than highlighting it in any way. Later sequels try to bump up the action and bump up the gore, but it didn't really add anything. Honestly, I'd give the action here a solid 7 out of 10, just because it's satisfying, but yet it gives you enough imagination to make it even more scary. Especially the scene where he kills Bob. That scene, watching it for the first time, it's, whoa, this guy is not natural. He's not a normal person. There's something more sinister happening here. For the cinematic category, I think this movie is honestly beautiful. I like the long shots that are taken by John Carpenter, just to build up the suspense and the tension in the scene, or the scenes where Laurie is walking away and all of a sudden the shape comes into frame. I think these are beautiful. I think these really do a great job of accenting that the presence of Michael is always there, and you're never really safe. You're always being watched, and this brings up this idea of how big is the boogeyman? Is the boogeyman always there? Can you escape him? And it gives a really good sense of dread in the scenes that he's in. In the music here, of course, the iconic Halloween theme is amazing. I know it, and you know it, and that we both know it for a reason, because it is iconic, because it is amazing, and it even set up for other slashers to try to create their own iconic tracks. I don't think any other slashers like Freddy or Jason have come close to this Halloween theme, but they still tried because of this movie's score. So for me, the cinematic aspect, I gave it a 10 out of 10 because it is perfect. We can argue about it all day, and you're going to be wrong because it is perfect. All the characters here are relatively simple, with standouts, of course, being Laurie, who plays the final girl in the Goody Goody Two Shoes. The Girl Scout is what she's called in the movie. And of course, the outstanding performance of Donald Pleasance playing Dr. Loomis, who is an iconic character of himself and would later become more and more deranged and more of a caricature as the series progressed. But here I think he puts on a very good performance, and makes you feel like he's a doctor who has witnessed this man grow up and is truly terrified because of what he can do and will do. And I really respect that. However, there are no major character arcs here. The characters don't really change a lot. Dr. Loomis hates Michael just as much as at the end of the film, and is terrified of him just the same amount as he is at the beginning to the end. There's no changes here. Laurie goes through a traumatizing experience. However, you don't see a lot of change within her. She doesn't change from being the Goody Goody Two Shoes to being this rebellious young woman. So while the characters here are interesting, I don't think it's groundbreaking. So I gave it an 8 out of 10 for character. There is humor here. There is solid humor, especially nowadays, as I'm not sure how it was back in 1978, whether the character of Linda and her constant use of totally was amazing. But there is humor, especially with Donald Pleasance yelling at a kid to get his ass away from the Myers house, and the little smirk that he gives makes me laugh every time I watch it. Same with, as I said before, Linda's use of totally, or Annie trying to smoke and try to cover up her smoke from her sheriff dad. I think that humor, it is simple, but I don't have to try to get a cramp in my gut for humor to be effective. And I think it does alleviate enough tension so that way all these scenes let you have like a release of where you have like a really, really tense scene of Michael stalking, and then you get that release of, oh, okay, this is a light moment, and then going back into that feeling of being stalked again and not feeling safe. So here I gave the humor a 8 out of 10. The plot for this movie is very simple. Man escapes prison, goes on a killing spree in his hometown. That's it. That's all we got off of this. He's just a man, the boogeyman, and it's a very, very abstract concept of, okay, well, what is he? Who is he? And it doesn't answer this. It doesn't answer that in the movie, but I think it's relatively believable. And even though it is simple, I think it's very effective and it does its job very, very well. We just know he's escaped prison, coming back for a killing spree, and that's his goal. He wants to do murder. That's it. Works for me. Simple, effective. 9 out of 10. The final category that I rank movies on is suspense. To this day, after 15 years of watching the same movie 2 to 3 times a year around Halloween, this film in particular can still make me jump up on the edge of my seat, begging Laurie to run just a little bit faster. The fact that the shape can still catch up to Laurie, even though she's sprinting and out of terror, and he's just simply walking, those scenes are still very terrifying, and build up so much tension where I'm just begging Laurie to run. And that tension is especially felt in that suspense of wondering, oh my gosh, is our final girl gonna be a final girl? Or are we just gonna be left with Dr. Loomis seeing the aftermath? Of course, now, looking back, we all know what happens. But watching it for the first time especially, I feel like that's a genuine thought of, oh, is our heroine gonna survive this? So for me, seeing the shape stalk his prey and that feeling of not knowing who is and who is not safe, Suspense was a 10 out of 10 for me. After adding up all the scores, this film averaged an 8.7. I don't do decimals, so I'm going to round it up to a 9. I think this movie is a 9. I don't think it's perfect. I think there are some small issues. I think the dialogue kind of slips here and there, just because they were very young actors at the time. I think the best actor in here is obviously Donald Pleasance. However, I think that some of the dialogue here is a bit low quality, and I think some of the acting here is a bit lower in quality as well. But that's not to say this film absolutely nailed what the slasher genre could be and would later be. This is the first slasher, in my opinion. This is the first successful slasher and created a genre of itself, where you had copycats like Jason trying to come up with an iconic music and trying to outdo kills constantly. And I think that's incredible. And the fact that they could make a reboot 40 years later with Halloween 2018 and it still be a successful franchise, I think that just goes to show how well this movie did, how good and strong the characters of Michael and Laurie are. And I think that just goes to show how great this movie and franchise as a whole can be. I think the series did peak with this entry. I think Halloween is the best Halloween movie. Halloween 1978 will not be outdone by any sequel. Much like the Jurassic Park franchise, the first Jurassic Park will forever have that feeling of magic, of seeing dinosaurs on screen for the first time. And unless that feeling is captured again, it won't reach that peak. I feel like any Halloween sequel that comes after the original, or even Halloween, or even the first sequel of Halloween 2, it's gonna have to build up that suspense and realize it's not just another slasher movie, but it's rather a thriller that has slasher aspects. And until that is brought into Hollywood or brought into studios, of building that tension and focusing on the suspense and really trying to take away any kind of clear motive and just having it really focusing on the plot of evil and just making Michael or the Shape just being the embodiment of evil that targets anyone for any reason with little to no remorse or empathy. The aspects of the thriller that show through is that no one is safe, and so it builds up that tension. But at the same time, he's not just a mindless slasher who will go after anyone, but instead a shape that will stalk its prey and then murder. And until all those aspects are brought in to a new sequel, we're not going to have a better movie than Halloween 1978 for Michael Myers or The Shape in general. And there will not be another story that is iconic as the original Halloween either. That's just my own personal opinion. I like the open-endedness of the boogeyman escaping at the end of the night, not knowing, okay, he got shot 6 times, 5 times, forget how many times he exactly got shot, because I'm pretty sure Dr. Loomis shoots 7 times. But he escapes at the end with the, of course, breathing through the mask that you hear at the end of the film. You can't beat that ending, and I don't think you really can. I think that's a problem that later sequels would try to do, was try to explain what was going on, what isn't going on, especially with entries 5 and 6. But this film as a whole got a 9, and I think it deserved that. So yeah, this movie is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it, and I ask you, what are you doing? All right, currently Halloween is just a few days away. Go watch Halloween. You need to watch it. And then if it suits you, if you like it, which you should like it, go see Halloween 2018, watch Halloween Kills, get a little angry at that, and go see Halloween Ends. See if you like this franchise or that story that they try to tell within this universe, and within this timeline. But yeah, that's going to be all from me. If you made it through the video, thank you. I appreciate any support. Please like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think of my review, if I can improve anywhere, if I should add another topic, if I should take away a topic even, or some rating category. Do you agree with my rating of a 9 out of 10? Do you think it should be a 10 out of 10? Do you think it should be a 6 out of 10? What are your thoughts? Please let me know down in the comments. And thank you. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.